Hare Krishna. Today, our esteemed guest is a sannyasi who is born and brought up in Germany. He is a Srila Prabhupada disciple and travels all over the world conducting discourses on Krishna consciousness.
Maharaj has immense taste and love for the holy names. No doubt, he is the source behind the initiatives like Mayapur Kirtan Mela and Holy Name Retreat in Vrindavan.
At a very young age, he started his spiritual quest, and his search culminated in taking shelter of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada.
In 1989, Maharaj took a vow for lifelong celibacy. He is an initiating spiritual master. He is also the spiritual director of Veda Academy, which is internationally acclaimed university for science, arts and philosophy.
He is also an excellent author. His books like Broken Name and Living Names is a must for a spiritual seeker who really wants to develop taste in holy names.
So, let's welcome together
His Holiness
Sachinandan Swami Maharaj.
Hare Krishna. So we are very excited and delighted to have a very, very special guest on our 4th episode of Vartalaap, the one devotee who has been the source of inspiration for thousands of devotees around the world. His Holiness Sachinandan Swami Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
So thank you very much, Maharaj, for sparing out your time. We feel really honored and ecstatic and little nervous, myself personally. And Maharaj, I can personally tell you, you have been a source of inspiration in my own journey. And one of the best Kirtan experiences I have is in your divine association. So thank you, Maharaj, for being on this show. And the first question, we heard so many times that at the mere age of 16 years, you started this path. Not only started, you joined full time at the age of 16. Now that age is a age where many students or youth are thinking about their careers, about their relationships and so many things. So what attracted you towards this Krishna consciousness or a path of spirituality?
Very simply put, I think it's the search for identity. Why do young people at this age become restless and question the path which their parents set out for them? They are understanding at this age that we have an identity separate from that of the family. Now, I remember our family was called Ertogumapa, starting with Erland, my older brother, Torsten, myself, Gunnar, my younger brother, and Ma and Pa. And when I was 15, I said, I'm sorry, now there are only 4 members in this family, not 5 any longer. It's not to refer to myself, Ertogumapa. No, it's only Ergumapa. The middle part of the sons is going on his search to find his identity as being separate from just a member of a family.
So Maharaj, while you announced that, what's that heart-touching expression that you still remember? How did your family respond to that?
I remember a big part of the family's fortune was managed by a so-called holding company, where each one of 7 siblings held a substantial share. This holding company made decisions over a huge amount of property. And they were constantly in anxiety because one of my uncles would make investments without asking the other shareholders, and in this way endangering the property of all of them. And they had to have meetings. Now it was a rule that at each meeting, when there was a bad word spoken by anyone about anyone else, they had to pay a fine. and of 1,000 German marks. That's a lot of rupees. I think some of the people who edit this film can now blend in the amount. So I would hide during these discussions, or could we call them quarrels, behind the sofa and watch as a little child how my uncles were quarreling over money. And I watched that during these meetings, one person, one uncle who couldn't control his mind and his tongue, left always the meeting by having to pay a huge fine. So 50,000 German marks was nothing. He would be so agitated that he heard abuse after abuse on everyone, although he had to pay a huge fine. And I thought, I will not become like that. Because when money is used without, let us say, self-realization, if money is there with a lot of pride on I and mine, it makes a person blind. And I was surrounded with rich blind men and did not want to become like that.
So Maharaj, when you were seeking that journey, the family, how did they respond to your personal decision of that? They were in favor or support, or something that you still carry in your heart related to that experience?
They were shocked because they could not imagine the journey which I would take. I think I also could not imagine it, but particularly for them, Krishna consciousness and Eastern spirituality was something very new, and they thought, well, it will last for 1 year, and then, like all the other faiths which our young child, our son, has been cultivating, he will also give this one up. Little did they know that that I'm still in my old age practicing it, and I'm always more enthusiastic every year and dance longer and jump higher from joy because it's such a, I think Krishna consciousness becomes more and more relishable as you make advancement and the dirty things in the heart leave the heart. So yes, they were shocked, but they knew I was stubborn, so they thought, let him just spend all his energies for 1 year on this, and then he will come back exhausted and tired at our door, and he will become normal. It was not like that.
Maharaj, just like you said, it appeared that you would do for just 1 year and then it would fade away. But it's now been more than half a century. You have been treading this path. And I'm sure that your journey would have many high points and perhaps a lot of challenges. So if I may be permitted to ask, any one challenge that was very intense for you, or that's in your top of your consciousness, top of your list, if you can share something about your most intense challenge in the path of Krishna consciousness.
Yes, I had heard from the Bhagavad Gita and from Prabhupada that by following Krishna consciousness, the heart would be cleansed and one would lose material desires. Further, one would make more and more taste or experience of Krishna. But after 20 years of practicing, I could see that my heart was not becoming so pure. I was not a pure devotee by any standard, nor was I really having significant experiences. And here came a crisis. you must know that I was not looking for a community to join. I was not looking to be part of a society or of interesting people. I wanted a spiritual experience. And now where there was not a deep spiritual experience after all these years, there was no reason for me to continue. I was put between two choices. Either I would leave the movement and try to make spiritual advancement on another path, or I would discover something which I had overlooked all these years that would help me to purify my heart and make that spiritual experience of Krishna. And in this dilemma, I rediscovered the holy name. I made a thorough research on what Prabhupada said about how to really make that spiritual experience. And I found sentences like, chanting Hare Krishna means to keep Krishna always in the heart. I became informed that Krishna is identical with his holy name, a concept which is very difficult to understand from our experience. How is a name identical with the person or the substance? And I decided at that turning point in my life, in that crisis, to become a scientist of the holy name, to go deeper in the philosophy, but more than that, to go deeper into the practice. I made the decision to spend 1 month out of a year just chanting, hiding somewhere and only focusing on the chanting. And I made the decision also that in my spreading Krishna consciousness to devotees, or giving programs amongst devotees, the chanting would become my main focus. And even in my programs to totally newcomers, the understanding of sacred sound, meaning it is carrying a divine presence or a divine energy in it, that would become the focus. So I have, and in my life also, so I have gone since that time every year on personal retreats, mostly in Vrindavan and Mayapur, but some also in the West. And I have given a lot of attention during our public programs and our yoga expositions. There's a world exposition, but we founded the yoga exposition where we had up to 12,000 people as guests for a few days. I decided to concentrate on this mystery that in spiritual sound there is tremendous potency in the entirely spiritual name of Krishna, that is Krishna, but also spiritual sound is imbued with the presence of the Lord, so that anyone who comes in contact with it experiences both the purification of the heart and the manifestation of Krishna within the heart. And so this crisis, if you want, became the turning point which helped me to discover my unique fascination and my unique contribution. I can tell anyone who watches this video, don't be afraid of a crisis. A crisis in medical term is defined at that turning point where the patient either dies or becomes healthy. So when you go into a real crisis, you start, you stop idealizing normalcy, a normal life, but you get the energy to change your life for the better.
Maharaj, if we may put some magnifying glass on that moment where you had choices, two choices. One, you rediscovered, you entirely transformed, and the other choice, as you mentioned, maybe find out some other path. Usually when a devotee is in that position, it's a very disturbing phase. It's a lot of discussion, dialogue within, and a lot of pullings from different directions. One advice, if a person is in that phase, struggling, perhaps you could take that decision for yourself. So what would you advise to someone who is really stuck in that phase?
Don't make the decision alone. The mind is conditioned to an endless chatter and repeats its points again and again and again. You need a new input during that time. So speak with good devotee friends during this time. Consult also your spiritual master, which I did by listening to his lectures and reading his books. It is not good when a person comes to a crisis in his life to stay by himself, because a patient needs a doctor and a medicine and a therapy. And most of the time these things cannot be, have to come from outside. That is really very, that's my tip. Don't stay alone where the endless chatter of the mind, repeating its thoughts again and again and not bringing a new perspective to the crisis will go on. No, break out of the chains and discuss with good devotee friends, read in the scriptures, and consult your spiritual master. And at that time you will find a path of light that leads out of the darkness.
And Maharaj, just like you said, you became a Japa scientist. So as a Japa scientist, you must have a lot of observation. So what's the problem that tops the list, which you have observed devotees making the most in their Japa?
I would call it the Japa schizophrenia. That tops the list. What it means is, you chant the holy name, but your mind is split, is apart from it. It goes another route. It's two different things which are going on. You need to make the sound and your mind one. Rupa Goswami gives a definition of this. He says, he speaks of the production of, you have to help me now, it's called, I believe, corillum, that black eye paste which is made. It is which children put around the corners of their eyes for healthy vision. Kajal, yes, kajal, kajal. That consists of two substances which need to be ground together to become one paste. In the same way, the holy name needs to be ground together with the mind. And that's why my new book is called The Living Name, the Guide to Chanting with Absorption. You need to be there. Just like this cloth. It was white, but it has become one, if you so want, with the saffron color dye. No? So it's now one thing, it's a saffron chatter. So in the same way, the mind must become one with the holy name, and then it's a spiritual mind. Now I have seen the main problem which devotees face is that they can't bring their mind and the holy name together, and therefore they suffer from spiritual schizophrenia. The Japa schizophrenia.
And in continuation to that question, if you would have to give just one advice, you have to select not two, not three. If you have to choose just one advice in relation to holy name, what would that be to the devotees?
Sit properly. Take the beats and then chant. While you chant and make the sound, listen to yourself chant sincerely. I will give you an example. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. Oh, I have to give a class tomorrow. What will I talk about? Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Oh, and today I have to really do many things. Let's just look on my WhatsApp if there are new messages. This is one type of chanting. And the other is Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. It's where you hear the sound and you consciously know, I'm now together with Krishna. I'm directly in his audience, and in this way you will absorb your consciousness and come to a new level. What I always say is, in one sentence, chant with connection. Don't, and with this I mean chant with a connection to the holy name, but also with Krishna, because Krishna is the holy name. Don't just make a mechanic concentration effort. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Rama, the mind and the sound. You see sometimes these devotees, and then they go, ooh, because again the mind had some foolish thought. No, it's a devotional exercise. Chant with a connection to the sound, but also with the person whose name you are chanting. No? As Prabhupada says, chant like a child who calls for the mother. When the child is disconnected from the mother and it will play around and say, Ma, 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 the mother knows he has not to give any attention because the child is not really calling for the mother. Only when the child is calling for the mother, Ma! At that moment, the mother knows, now I have to come. So when you chant, be connected with the sound, but also with the person whose name you chant.
And Maharaj, during your journey, I think you are creating newer and newer experiences every day. As you mentioned, you are far more excited and blissful. So if you can share with us one experience that you really fondly remember in the core of your heart that nourishes you or keeps you going.
Oh, there are many experiences, but one which where I felt directly Krishna answering was when I had gone to Vrindavan and I had gone to chant the holy names at Govardhan. Perhaps you have heard we are building a wonderful retreat center where we hope the congregation of Punjabi Bagh will visit us very often. And before it, we have been given a part of the forest right at Giriraj. We have the stewardship over this forest. We need to keep it green and clean, and then we can chant there. So I was once chanting, and as I was chanting, Premanjana, all of a sudden, in my right ear, I hear a noise. I turn towards the noise, and what do I see? I see both a frightening and a hopeful scene. Before this, I have to say, I had felt a dry moment in chanting, and I was sitting there at Govardhan, and I did not feel anything. There was no concentration, no connection, no inner participation in the chanting. I felt dry like the deserts around Delhi in my heart. So I had prayed to Krishna, please give me a little sign that you care. There's just that I'm not just crying in the wilderness. So I had chanted with this, give me a little sign. Then I hear the sound and I whirl around. What do I see? I see a black cobra coming my way to bite me. And at the same time I see 2 or 3 parrots just diving like fighter jets and going for the eyes of the cobra. So the cobra tries to get to Sachinandan Swami to bite him, but the parrots are diving and attacking the eyes. And I could understand if the parrots would not have come to drive the cobra away, the cobra would have, while I was sitting like this, would have gone and bitten me. Giriraj or Krishna had sent the parrots, who never have anything to do with cobras, to keep them away from me. And I jumped up. The cobra was not so fast as it should have been, you know. I jumped up and ran. And the moment I ran away, the cobra gave an angry shh and turned towards Giriraj, and the parrots happily flew away. Their job was done. Yes, Krishna had arranged that the parrots protected me, which was a clear sign that he cared. I didn't need a proof more than that. Hare Krishna.
Very interesting episode, Maharaj. Maharaj, you have written, we often hear you saying in the class, my dear devotees, my dear friends, and my dear critics. So, my next question is related to dealing with criticism. What's the proper attitude, especially in the modern age, for a devotee to deal with one's criticism? Maybe genuine, maybe non-genuine. Maybe there's some truth in it, may not be the truth in it.
Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur had always said that the critics are one's friends. Now when you look in the scriptures for a possible explanation of that, you will hear then that when the critics criticize a person, they take on his so-called bad qualities. A critic who engages in negativity, either justified or not justified, by finding fault with a person, takes on these negativities. He acts like a blotting paper. When you have too much ink on the page, a blotting paper absorbs the ink. So the critic thus renders an important service to us. He makes us more serious. It doesn't matter if his critics are justified or if they are false. It makes you more serious. You understand this world is a world of where there will be friends and enemies, but also the critics are your friends because they do make you more serious. Even if what they say are just their own projections, their own ideas. They may think, oh, Premanjana is only preaching I don't want to say anything now. They may make a false claim, but it makes you serious. It makes you serious and so I think in this dual world, we will find friends and we will find critics, just like we find a day and we find a night. And I always pray for each of my critics to be blessed by Krishna. I do not want to fall in the trap by now becoming angry at them. I think then I would lose my own spiritual integrity. I pray for them that may everything become well for you, and may you become more satisfied in your heart, so that you do not need to attack others. This is what I do. I have seen this. Once in Croatia, I had given a lecture, and at the end of the lecture, I often do sign books. People want an autograph. And I could see there was a long queue, and in the queue, a person in soldier dress came closer. It was the time of the war. And I could see him coming closer. After 1 hour, he was almost where I was, and he had violence in his face. So then, when finally when he was standing before me, he said, "What would you do if I would take my fist now and beat right into your face? You have spoken about forgiveness. You have spoken about being kind to others. What would you do if some violence is done to you?" It was in the time of the war where I said we should practice, we should start ourselves with non-violence, and then the cycle of violence is stopped. If you again and again engage in counter-violence, the wheel of violence will keep on rolling, because the other side will also do counter-violence. So the soldier who maybe had lost his friend, who was maybe shot with a bullet in his head right before this soldier's eye, he was angry at me. I answered very honestly. I said, well, if you would beat me, maybe I would break a tooth. I would not be very happy, but I would try to understand that most probably you are very upset. I have maybe upset you because you had an experience where you lost maybe a friend in the war. You didn't want to, you only wanted to live revenge. Stop the cycle of violence. That is what I live by. I would not do counter-violence to you. He looked at me with that glance, I get you later. So when the program was over, I left the stage from the back entrance. I had to walk through a dark court, and there I see my friend, the soldier, coming out of the shadow and running at me. And I know I only had one person with me. The soldier was much stronger. He was practiced in the art of killing. Maybe he would not kill me, but he would beat me severely. And I, namaste, let come what come. So when the soldier was close, he looked into my face, and he said, with a voice tearing up, "Thank you. I lost my friend. just like you thought, he was killed right next to me. His brain was flying over my combat suit. But it is clear to me that someone must stop this cycle of violence. Then I said, yes, this is what Draupadi, after the battle of Kurukshetra, also decided. When Ashwatthama, who had killed her 5 sons, was brought before her by Arjuna so that she could mete out justice, she said, let him go. It must stop at one moment, this violence which will bring counter-violence. So this was more than a critic. He wanted to do violence, severe violence, and I could understand. I had forgiven him theoretically for what he would do, and it worked. He became friendly. He said, thank you for your advice. The worst thing that the critic does to you is that you lose your inner calm, that you become influenced, and that you are brought away from your integrity as a devotee. A devotee should wish well for every living entity, including those who by some karma act as his enemy.
And one question, Maharaj, related to, I came to you once to take you from the hospital, and you said, I wanted to take a nap. And you took a nap, I think for maximum 7 to 10 minutes. And then you said you are ready. And I was surprised and I was shocked that one can sleep only for 10 minutes. So I really wanted to ask you, on a very practical level, how do you manage your health, and specifically with sleeping little, or anything you can relate to that experience?
In Tehran, Srila Prabhupada said, this body is not to be neglected. It's like a tree which can, when it is cared for, give the fruit of self-realization. So he said, just like you keep a tree in good order so that it can give a fresh mango, so you also take care of the body, but not excessively. About the 7-minute rest, I want to tell you and everyone a little story. When Prabhupada was in Germany, he stayed with us in the castle. We had a castle for, I believe, 2 weeks. And at one stage, it was known he would make a tour through the castle to inspect the rooms. Who wouldn't like to see the rooms of a German castle? But we didn't know when he would come. So I was in the translation department. We had, I believe, 4 tables. One was the rough translation, then the editing of the first draft, then the second editing, and then, I believe, another editorial step. I was on the first table, and it was right after breakfast. There was a heavy halava for breakfast, and when I sat down on the table to do the first translation, the rough draft, I felt very tired. So there were a few things we could do. We had a stand-up table where you stood up and you could bind your seeker on the wall. So if you would doze off, first you would stand, and second your seeker would be there to hold you. That was one option, or I could take a minimal rest. So I put my alarm clock on 7 minutes. I still remember. I chose the little rest. I laid down on the left side. My table was a low table, so I was conveniently lying under the table. When after some time I hear a deep voice. So this is the translation of it. And I hear a high voice, yes, Prabhupada. This was our GBC member. Now, when Prabhupada had arrived, he had given a lecture in which he said, I was never lazy in the service of my spiritual master. I was not like the servants in Calcutta who go to the Dalhousie Park and they sleep there, and then they come back in the evening, and then the master asks, where were you all day? They say, I was busy in your service. I was not like this. Prabhupada said, I would walk through fire for my spiritual master. Okay, now Prabhupada was in the office where I would do my service, and I was thinking, he's right in the room, and he will find out that I'm sleeping under my table. Oh no, what should I do? Should I remain sleeping? I mean, or not sleep, I can't sleep. Should I remain hiding under the table? But then I thought, no, my function will be explained. And then he will look and he will see some feet under the table. So better I come out. So I came out under the table. One cheek was red from lying on something, a headrest. I came out under the table and I looked right into the eyes of Srila Prabhupada, who had turned that moment around. And Prabhupada was, what do you do when someone comes under a low table out? It looks surprising, you know, it looks as if someone comes out of the grave or something. So Prabhupada looked at me with surprise, and then his eyes started to laugh, and he seemed to communicate, no problem. So I always remember the 7-minute rest, and I want to make sure I'm getting up on time. Maybe it could be a disciple always thinks my spiritual master is right there. So I might have remembered that when I was in Manjana's car from the Ayurvedic hospital. Yes.
And Maharaj, just a couple of questions more, very quick questions. Someone who's very enthusiastic about learning kirtans, so what would you advise them?
Sing, sing, sing. Not only during an organized kirtan, but whenever you are somewhere, try to sing the holy name. It should be done sada, always. And then two things will happen. You will actually learn to sing for Krishna and not for anything else. It will be done with the right consciousness. Also, the more you sing, the more you enter the world of kirtan. You just have to do it often. But kirtan means, sometimes people ask me, to praise. And the praising should be done always, not just when you sit together or when you are leading a kirtan, but it should be done for as regular as you breathe.
And Maharaj, one thing is, many devotees have shared, in our talks, whenever your name comes up, everyone face lit up, and everyone notices that there is certain amount of positive aura or certain amount of blissfulness that we witness in your personality, on your face, whenever you come. So how can someone, how did you develop that?
I seem to have that. Even journalists, when I give interviews on the TVs, they ask me afterward, "What's the secret? How do you smile like this? Is it with the muscles or?" And then I say, no, it comes from within. It is within. I do not. I can only give this one answer. I have made a decision in my life to always choose the positive side and not to associate with negativity. I always see there are wonderful opportunities because Krishna is always with us. He's always next to us. What I have seen is if you allow your mind to harbor negative feelings like criticism of another person, like fault finding, like lamenting, like complaining about anything, one negative thought will pull after it another negative thought. There's a camel caravan of negative thoughts which happen if you are not disciplining your thoughts. So I have made a decision to see in every situation the positive thing, even positive lessons which you have in hard situations, and that makes me always stay on the side of happiness.
This is our last round for today. It's called a rapid fire round. So we'll ask you certain questions and you have to answer in just one word, or maybe as few words as possible.
Yeah.
And it has to be as quick as possible.
Jaldi.
So Marav, what's the first thought that comes to your mind when you hear these words? Dreams.
Another reality.
Devotion.
Opening of the heart.
Morality.
Very necessary.
Art of giving.
A compassionate heart.
Art of receiving.
Being grateful.
Love.
Oh, so many things. Being overwhelmed by the recognition Krishna is most wonderful.
Spirituality.
An open invitation.
Your favorite bhajan.
Hari Haraye Nama Krishna Yadavaya Namaha.
A favorite prasad.
Carrot halwa.
A favorite deities, apart from your personal deities.
Radha Shyam Sundar. And I also like the most beautiful Shri Radhika Raman. It's a very beautiful.
So Radha Shyam Sundar of Vrindavan.
Yes.
And Radha Radhika Raman of ISKCON Punjabi Bagh.
I have always a picture of Shri Radhika Raman with me.
Your favorite pastime of Krishna.
Kaliya Damana Leela.
Your favorite pastime of Lord Chaitanya.
Delivering the soul who was cursed to become a crocodile.
One place where you would like to spend most of your time.
Next to Govardhan.
One thing that you repent in your life.
To not always have taken full advantage of the opportunities which Srila Prabhupada and Krishna has given to me.
One thing that completely satisfies your soul.
Being in an ecstatic kirtan.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
So if there are any one or two questions from the audience, very hard-burning questions, we can very quickly take that up. Okay, we'll start with Mataji.
Thank you, Maharaj. So my question is, how can we be grateful all the time to, how can we remind ourselves to be grateful to our Krishna throughout our day, throughout our night? How can we always remind that thing?
I think you need to try to understand Krishna's plan, because sometimes there are challenging situations in our life, but behind them is also a plan of Krishna for your reformation and your betterment. Another point in being grateful all the time is you concentrate on what has been given to you that is very favorable, instead of concentrating on the things which may not work at the moment. So you have to go to the school of gratefulness, where you always make this choice to, I don't want to lament, let me see where there could be Krishna's plan in this situation, and what I have gotten from Krishna that is his mercy. Your fortune. Yes.
Well, like since you are from Germany, there are many people who share the ideology of Hitler. They want to give like pain to the world. So what message you want to give to them?
To do justice to the Germans, they feel very guilty for standing behind Hitler. There's only now a very, very small minority who still believes that Hitler did good. Most of them needed psychotherapeutic treatment for the violence they shared in. So someone who does violence to himself, to others, I would remind him, if you do violence to others, it's like doing violence to yourself, because the others belong also to you, and whatever you do against, they are connected with you, and whatever you do against them goes back to you. Imagine, maybe my tooth would hurt. If I now would take a hammer and beat on the hurting tooth, I would really beat myself. So if someone, if I attack someone, I really attack myself. By the laws of karma, whatever I do towards others comes immediately back to me. So I always say to people who are in the belief of hurting others, you are hurting yourself. Stop hurting yourself. Because we are all connected. We are all brothers and sisters of Krishna's, and Krishna is the Supreme Father.
This next upcoming schedule, so we'll close with the last question. Right? This is the last question for today's evening. Thanks.
Hare Krishna. As you talk in the living name about Sambandha, that without Sambandha we cannot chant in proper consciousness. So, but in our general life, when we talk about Sambandha, then generally it is with a person. Like if I have a Sambandha with my friend, that I just can't live without him. But when that person goes away, so that Sambandha also fades away. Like that Sambandha also is not that much strong. But with Krishna, we never, like from millions of births, we haven't have any physical contact with Krishna. So then how to develop that Sambandha? It becomes very difficult.
Krishna is very close to us, even though we have forgotten him. But the problem with Krishna is he can only be seen through love. The ether element is also close to everyone. It surrounds all of us, but it cannot be easily seen. So in the same way, Krishna cannot be easily seen by someone who has no love of Godhead. So, but still, in our core essence, we are part of God. The soul is not on its own. It is dependent on Krishna, like the spark is dependent on the fire. And once you enter the processes of bhakti, you have that you develop those eyes which are necessary to see Krishna. You develop those feelings which are necessary to feel Krishna. You develop those ears which are necessary to hear Krishna. But without the processes of bhakti, like chanting, hearing the Bhagavatam, devotee association, he remains invisible like the ether, which is everywhere, but still cannot be seen with the naked eye. So I always say to people, the human being is born with an inherent desire to connect with Krishna, to connect with God. It helplessly always is drawn in that direction. The French atheist Jean-Paul Sartre says, it seems the human being is cursed to be a religious being. He was not happy with that inborn drive. Why is there an inborn drive? Because it's natural. Why do you have an inborn drive to eat? Even no one tells you this, because it's natural. Why do we have an inborn drive to search after God, to pray to God? Because we belong to Him. It is a natural relationship. But we need the eyes to see Him, the ears to hear Him. And they can be developed only by bhakti. Hare Krishna.
So thank you very much, Maharaj. We certainly believe that it's a special blessing of Shri Shri Radha Radhikaraman that we are getting your divine association, and we sincerely hope that this conversation nourishes you and empower you in your spiritual journeys to move forward. Thank you. Srila Prabhupada's ki jai.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.